As a member of a tribal community, we all have a perspective to share that could be helpful to one another. We are at our strongest when we talk about the hard issues affecting all of us. We don't have all the answers, but we are going to find some of the answers together. This is Tough Medicine. For this episode, let me introduce you to our panelists. Ambrosia Stone is a member of the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe, born and raised in the Owens Valley amongst the Big Pine and Bishop Paiute tribal communities. Ambrosia is a United States Navy veteran, having served 8 honorable years while pursuing her education in social science, human services, and organizational leadership, now focusing towards her PhD. For the last 8 years, Ambrosia has worked in tribal communities, working for the Bishop Indian Education Center, Owens Valley Career Development Center, and most recently taking the position as the Social Services Director for the Bishop Paiute Tribe. Within her work, Ambrosia leads with the hope and mission to assist her communities in becoming self-sufficient while incorporating values and traditions of indigenous teachings to help the healing and recovery of struggling communities. Ambrosia has been involved in several professional and community programs, from serving as an expert witness for Native families, pursuing motivational speaking for tribal communities based around suicide awareness, PTSD, domestic violence, and well-briety. Ambrosia is a proud mother who takes pride in being part of her community and taking part in ceremony and traditions, leading the wellness of herself and her family. Maintaining his indigenous matrilineal societal structure, Monty J. Bengochea calls himself a Patanagwet Numa, meaning people from the south. Both his ja'as, through his mu'a, are from the upper end of Paiahoop, also known as the Owens Valley, California. His togo is from Honova. His late northern Paiute, Miwok Washoe father has ancestral ties to Onabigwe area of Antelope Valley, Colville, California, and Hetch Hetchy country. Monty helps with the Yaga Nuga ceremony, Tuba Nuga, and participates in traditional Nayagwi. Monty currently holds the title of the Bishop Paiute Tribal Historic Preservation Officer. He currently is the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission Chairman, an entity whose primary duty is to secure water rights and more land for the 3 Owens Valley tribes of Bishop, Big Pine, and Lone Pine. Recently, Monty became a board member for the Native Star Foundation. Tara Frank is an enrolled member of the Bishop Paiute tribe and a descendant of the Timbisha Shoshone tribe and Navajo Nation. She is currently the director of the Owens Valley Paiute Shoshone Cultural Center, a museum entity of the Bishop Paiute tribe. Tara was born and raised in Bishop. She is knowledgeable and familiar with tribal and cultural preservation, cultural resource management, as well as educational and community outreach by revitalizing our traditional seasonal gatherings and ceremonies. Tara has revived the Owens Valley Paiute Shoshone Cultural Center into a community hub for gathering and learning. Tara has played the role of enhancing museum programs in other tribal communities as well, including her work with the Morongo Band of Mission Indians in Banning, California, and Sherman Indian High School in Riverside, California. Beyond the job, Tara continues to play an active role within the community. Her hope is to continue inspiring others to bring focus to the cultural heritage and traditions of the area. Dr. Art Martinez is a member of the Chumash tribe and a clinical psychologist. Art possesses a unique melding of cultural and clinical experiences. He holds a master's in humanistic psychology from California State University, Sonoma, and a doctorate in clinical psychology from International University. Art has served in a consultation capacity for courts as an expert witness in more than 3,500 cases in state courts, U.S. federal district courts, and tribal court jurisdictions. He currently serves as the co-director of the Center for Native Child and Family Resilience and a senior advisor to the Center for Capacity Building for Tribes. He has served in many jurisdictions as a provider of mental health and child assessments for dependency matters of tribal and state court jurisdictions. Dr. Martinez has served as a trainer and consultant in culturally engaged evaluation and program development. His doctoral research and dissertation focused upon the use of traditional Native American health approaches within clinical interventions with Native American families. His master thesis specifically addressed the salient issues of Indian child welfare in America. Dealing with loss during a pandemic.
In respect to each of our families, everyone is doing their best, and they're doing their best in knowing how to do what they've always done traditionally, historically, throughout their families and throughout their teachings, is that none of us, have it right at this point. And it's important for everybody to know that so that we know I'm not wrong, she's not wrong, he's not wrong. But what we're doing is simply figuring out a way that works for our family.
For us in our community, we had to um, hold off on some of the ceremonies to help that passing. And it was hard because we're used to dancing, we're used to having to come together and congregate and offering food, giving that hug. And that's not the case right now. And so you see people with their elbow handshakes. You're dealing with people that don't understand or don't want to believe that this is the pandemic. And so it's kind of hard because you're putting in that situation of what do you do to help ease them and comfort them at the same time.
And one thing I really wanted to touch on in seeing within these last couple of months, not only within myself, but, my fellow community members or relatives within the community, is honoring traditional ways that may have been forgotten or we may fell out of touch with. um it wasn't but months ago I had hair all the way down my back, and now I sit here today with a short haircut. And me finding a way that I've lost someone dear to me, immediate in my family, and offering my hair as medicine in a good way to start over, to have that new beginning. And other people in the community or other family members that I have that may be extended can see that as a way that I'm choosing to memorialize, and giving that as new growth for myself, and, letting them carry that on.
It's okay to mourn. It's okay to cry and take that time for yourself. And in my family, we mourn for so long. We cut our hair, like Amby was mentioning, because that's an offering. That's something that you're stopping that life. You're helping it pass on to the next life. And so seeing that happen, it will trigger other people to help with their mourning, help with the way that they grieve, and to be okay to talk about it.
We stand together with them. We show the families the support that we have and the part of ourselves that we're offering to support them. And we're also recognizing that this will take some time, that we're all going to get through this together. And when we do, we'll be stronger for it.
Planning services with changing regulations.
If we haven't identified a way to do this appropriately, which I'm sure many families, we're just adapting. And the hard part is we're adapting to counties and cities and rules and regulations of your county's in the red tier, your county's in the purple tier. You can gather with this many people, or now you can't gather at all. And we're resilient as people, of course, and we're adapting to, okay, we can gather, okay, we can't gather. Now we can have a cry dance, now we can't. Now we have service at, the burial, now we don't have service at all. And how our families are adapting.
With this pandemic, and maybe realizing that we can't come together how we've been used to coming together, within a week of a person's passing to help them go on. And even without our traditional ceremony, I think it's been tough on just all the families, that whether they believe in this cry dance way or not, that it's still got to be kind of pretty tough, especially when we see our people in the hospital. We know our families are maybe on their deathbed, and we can't go and visit, and it's got to be tough.
I feel that there's a lot of barriers that have been put forth in this pandemic, and some of the ways that we've learned to memorialize our loved ones instead of gathering as one together. We've really learned to keep up with what society has to offer as far as connecting through social media, or really learning to utilize, which sounds crazy, but a cell phone, to text, to call, to post pictures, to post messages. And thinking traditionally that's not what we would always do, but thinking, how can we memorialize our loved ones in a way that shows our community, or even shows our loved ones that we're still honoring those traditions and those respective ways.
Coming from a tribal community and being one of the members of this tribe and being an active person within these old ways and trying to keep it up with my family, it's a hard thing during this pandemic, and our worlds were just totally turned upside down, sideways, didn't know which way to go. And so trying to continue the culture, continue our traditions, and then you throw the pandemic in there, it's chaotic. And a lot of compromise had to happen within this time.
Some, like the internet, I mean, that's been a way that's being used more and more as we have services on the internet, and we're able to pray together. We're able to, for the family to see that there are many, many more people, not even from the local community, but from all around, that are standing with them, that are supporting them, that are recognizing the loss that we all have.
When is it okay to cry?
Through our beliefs, our indigenous beliefs, how the water, where it's connected to all of us, through all of us, not just us as human beings, but everything in life. Even in the rocks, water, they found water in the obsidian. And I think through that relationship, or that understanding of how meaningful water is, and not to just use it as a so-called cliche that water is life, that sort of come out of the standing rock struggle. But in reality, that is so definitely true. That when we cry, when we shed tears, that we give the most meaningful thing, the most meaningful gift of, with our prayer. Different ways that Native people pray. And of course, one is, through our talk, through our voice, through our songs, through our dance, and through the gift of water, the gift of smoke, through burning sage or burning sweetgrass, cedar, toza, other medicinal material that we as Indian people have been gifted. And so he just mentioned that it's through the tears, through the water, is the most one of the deeper ways of prayer.
When those things don't happen, it can be that it's just not time for you, to do that. But it also can be that you're not ready to do that. And as simple as it can be as simple as that you're kind of fighting it. And we see that happen a lot, by the way, with families, that they're just trying to make it through. You see when we have a loss in the family, that people, maybe they're not going to cry before the funeral. Maybe they're not going to cry at the cry dance, because they're just trying to put one foot in front of the other to kind of get through this. But, there'll come a time, maybe it might be a month from then or a few weeks from then. My close brother passed away from COVID not long ago. We had a big funeral as best we could, as safely as we could. And, it was really amazing to me that the kids, the little ones that he left behind, they were really, just kind of being strong and not crying. And, I was kind of, they're little guys, and I was kind of like, wow, I wonder what they're holding back. As the funeral was over, then we all kind of sat together and then they just started crying and sobbing, for their loss. Why? Because they felt safe to do that. They felt like it was time for their healing.
I think for me, it's okay to mourn, and it's okay to cry. And that's what we do. That's how we get through. And to wail for these people, to just take a moment to reflect.
If given the opportunity to do, our cry dance service, we always tell our people, we're here to do the best that we can to help them, to help their loved one go on. That sometimes, especially when we're doing our Yaga Nuga service, I say that for the benefit of younger people that might come around, or they don't never had the opportunity to hear indigenous knowledge or indigenous education, because public schools do not teach anything about our indigenous being or indigenous ways.
How do we deal with anger from loss?
I want to say those were good comments, positive comments that I appreciate hearing. When I was listening to you put the question out, probably anger kind of overwhelmed me more than it should have. And my first response I wrote down was silence, alone, and anger.
It's important to know that anger is actually a part of depression also. When we feel depressed, we feel really, really like angry and frustrated, and we feel really, really powerless to do anything about it. And so we're just sitting and it's eating us up. When someone's angry, they're reacting to something that they feel, but they don't feel safe in feeling that. They can't let that out because it's not safe. And so what do we do? Unfortunately, it's just part of DNA, maybe, is that when we don't feel safe, we attack, right? Or we either freeze, we run, or we attack. And so anger is that action of attacking. Unfortunately, the people who are around us are the ones that usually end up getting the brunt of that. And if there's no one around us, it's going to be ourselves. So none of those stories end well. So we try to hold it in, but both of those scenarios, ways of dealing with it, should tell us we need to reach outside of ourselves. We need to ask for help from our people, our family, our community. Even though we're maybe not bolted together that way, we want to. It's like the Creator's challenging us to. You got to deal with this, or you're going to end up living a nightmare. That's where we really have our ceremonies, all the things the Creator gave us just to be healthy and to heal. That's where that's has such a great importance. We also know that if we carry around that anger, it's like a poison, and it's going to eat us up, or maybe take us to, like you said, substance use or other things that are self-destructive, because we can't do it ourselves. If we could have done it ourselves, we would have done that. But you can't do everything yourself.
For us as community members who are struggling and who are grieving, to be acceptive that we're not okay. I think, like Brian, you mentioned a very strong component of why a lot of us choose not to heal, and that's because we're ashamed. We're ashamed that we haven't crossed that line and we haven't cried or we haven't moved on. And a lot of that comes from fear. And what crying represents for a lot of people is that if I cry and I let go of these emotions that I'm hindering inside, have I just let go of that loved one forever? Am I going to be out of touch after this?
Ambrosia about that, brought up the word shame, and I think that has a lot to do with us men not feeling good about ourselves, because, you know, uh, and how I think how we beat each other up, ourselves up, because sometimes we don't, we're not uh, seeking the good medicine.
Did we do enough to honor our loved ones?
Are a lot of things that I hear from family members and individuals within the community, or have I not done this in the most appropriate way to where I'm not going to send them on their journey in a good way because I wasn't able to hold a cry dance or hold a ceremony? Are we not able to let them go in a good way?
Just like our elders always told us, hard times will call upon us to get back to the basics. And so what are we doing? The basics are when our families lose someone, we are losing a part of our family. We're losing a part of our community. And as a family and as a community, we have to stand together in funerals or wakes or however we did that. We we came together as a community and we stood with each other. We stood with the family during their time of need and recognizing their loss. Uh, we helped them to we helped that person to make their way to the other side so that there wouldn't be um, hardship here that would be holding them back. We also cried together at times and had that kind of healing that comes from a good cry. We had ceremony together. We even shared food together. And so we can still do some of these things. Maybe not in the way we did it before, but I've seen many communities, many families kind of come up with their own way that you have to just, right away, well, that's something like the creator brought to them.
Thank you, Art, for your comments. They really hit home about a lot of different aspects, and I appreciate that. One of my family members, what they said is that when one family hurts, we all hurt. So, that community, that it goes beyond just the typical mom and dad, kids, family. We're that extended, and so it does affect the whole community. And finding those outlets is going to be more helpful for them and for anybody in our community to tap into.
We can't go to ceremonies. We can't do all these things, that we would like to do. Um, what can we do? Well, we can become stronger as a family. We can do things that maybe we're not doing, like sit together and have dinner, pray over our meals, get together in a family sweat, maybe have teachings and stories that maybe we've been forgetting to do with our children. And then as we come together, we'll be able to share that. We'll be stronger as a family and as a community.
What stems from my thoughts is that we're all doing our best to figure this out, and there is no right or wrong way. We've really been put in a place to where, we've had to think outside that traditional box that we've been accustomed to for so long.
When the fog lifts and we notice the holes in our circle.
One one of the community members talked about this as being in a fog, that once this pandemic lifts up, they're going to still see these people. That once we're able to go out of the social distancing and be able to get out of our own little pods, that they're still going to see grandma, grandpa, Hutsi, Kunu, aunties. And that's not going to be the case. It could be a year, it could be 2 years, and it could be 20 years. And you just realize that they're gone.
Just as you were saying, you know, there's going to come a time when we come out of this fog that is this time of COVID, and we're going to look around and there's going to be less people. You know, there's going to be some of our relatives will be missing. And that's going to call upon us to do some things that maybe we didn't think of ourselves as doing before. Like taking a leadership role for when it's needed, like bringing our people together to do a memorial maybe after a year, because that's maybe a time when we can come together. The other thing we have to realize is that when that fog lifts, there will be people missing from our circle, people that brought a lot to our community. You know, people that were helpers that had, you know, some people just brought a really good feeling, you know, to our community. Always good for a smile and, you know, something good to say. Some of them were singers. Some of them were leaders in their own way. And so we have to understand that if we have our traditional leaders around, what their question to us is going to be, who's going to fill that spot? Who's going to take on that responsibility that they had? And that's what we make ready. Maybe not, you know, if it's within us, well, that's good. But it could be within our family. It could be within our extended family.
Bring the people together after a year, rough year of the deceased gone, and use short 3 or 4 songs. Have a lunch, good dinner, and the family would have provide a giveaway for whoever came. And in the old days, from how I understand it, they would go to wherever the deceased was buried, and they would smooth over the grave, and they would leave, and they would as kind of different how we are now, that we decorate the graves, but the old way, the people would just smooth that hump over and let it go. But I'm sure they would always remember their loved one where they were put to go back to the earth, to become earth again.
There's going to come a time when when we'll start coming out of this, and then at that time, you know, we talked about those memorials and things. We need to, as a community, as tribes, as societies, we need to make a place for that. So, you know, bringing our community together in gatherings, helping one another to realize that we've all been through this together. Most of the families that have lost people think that in some ways they think it only happened to them. You know, but it didn't. It happened to all of us. The Silver State Gourd Society, we've talked about possibly in not too far distant future having a gourd dance to begin to bring our people out of this time. Of course, we have to wait till it's safe, and we have to do things in a safe way. But we know that we're beginning to talk about that and to think about that. And so I think more and more that's going to be our discussion in the community, is what do we do to lift ourselves up out of this time and do it in a way that brings us closer to the people that we were meant to be.
Some type of healing does need to happen, and we should start preparing ourselves, preparing our families, There's a lot of um, healing that needs to happen, and I don't know what that can look like. And it will take our healers, our people that believe in that way, our leaders that guide us in that way, in that fashion, to help us and um, present something to community. And it goes back to, not everything's right. We're trying to do the best way we can, and get that process. If this hasn't happened to our community, I don't think any of us have dealt with something like this traumatic and this big of a loss.
Closing remarks for the community.
It will come back to the old ways, and we will continue that way. And I think it's individuals like yourselves that help that. And we just keep that momentum, keep that energy going, that we are resilient people. We can come out of this. And this is a strong, this is just going to make us stronger and make us more of a community and help one another. How are we preparing this? How are we preparing for our community? And what are those alternatives? What can we, how can we recover?
Well, thank you all for your words. As really good comments about representing all the things that our people are going through. We're going through um, losses, we're going through frustration, we're going through um, just feeling alone in many ways as family and family members.
Just gathering, from the conversation that we've had this evening, one thing that I would really like to encourage within the community, and this isn't only for people who are dealing with loss and grief in our communities, but for, if you're a service provider in these communities and you provide services, through any type of or form of healing, like Monty said, we tend to stray away from mental health because it does scare a lot of our relatives away, and they don't want to be attached to that stigma of having a mental health issue or having a disorder, or having an issue, an underlying issue. But is to for us to all hold each other accountable. If you're in the community and you're a service provider and you provide a service of healing and recovery and treatment to deal with loss and grief and depression, substance abuse, addiction, now's the time for you to take the tools that have gotten you to where you are within your position in the community as a service provider to say, what can I do today? What can I do tomorrow or in the next year to come to help my community?
To find yourself, to tap into that and see what all those good things are within your life, within your families, and build upon that. And I think that's, for me, going back to the basics, and what makes you happy, and build upon that. um, what brought those moments on? How did you get to that point of that happiness and that healing? And so I think, if you're involved in the culture, if you're a basket weaver, a flinter, if you're a hunter, if you just like to go to the mountains and be in the mountains, and if you're into the sports, if you're a gambler, to tap into all these different things that make you happy, and eventually that will turn into healing, and it will help you, like Ambi said, find that medicine, find that healing that needs to happen. Reaching outside yourself, you, if you're there by yourself and you're alone, find an outlet, find somewhere, whether it has to be a specialist or your best friend or someone you don't even know, those, that little offering, that little condolences, that little, just $5 to help the guy that needs, is homeless right now, those kind of things need to happen. And so it's reaching outside yourself and putting yourself in their situations, to be patient, to be kind, because everybody's going through some type of emotion right now.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you as panelists for giving your time and your thoughts to this discussion. And I want to thank all of the listeners for giving us your time. And hopefully, there's some tools within our words that will, help you in one way or another with dealing with loss as a community. And I know this is a complicated subject, and I feel like we've only begun to scratch the surface, but there are a lot of really good lessons that were talked about today, and ideas and thoughts and tools. And, again, um, I encourage, anybody to look at the resources that we have provided on this video. And if you need to, they're there for you to utilize. And, um, we can't wait to see each other again soon. And I'd like to thank all of you as panelists for giving your time and your thoughts to this discussion. And I want to thank all of the listeners for giving us your time. And hopefully, there's some tools within our words that will, help you in one way or another with, dealing with loss as a community. And I know this is a complicated subject, and I feel like we've only begun to scratch the surface, but there are a lot of really good lessons that were talked about today, and ideas and thoughts and tools. And, again, um, I encourage, anybody to look at the resources that we have provided on this video. And if you need to, they're there for you to utilize. And, we can't wait to see each other again soon. Nirongo toyo magwe kimaru, Nirongo toyo magwe kimaru, Nirongo toyo magwe kimaru, Pawina nabawa we, Pawina nabawa.